So I understand that you, first of all, you just got off the phone with your opponent. Delegate Dan Cox had conceded the race. Tell me a little bit about that conversation and what did he say?
It was a incredibly kind and gracious conversation where he called and he thanked me on a hard charging and on a spirited and as he said a really good campaign. And we actually talked a little bit about his son because I know that his son is a member of the 82nd Airborne Division, which was my old unit in the military. And so I'm thankful to receive a concession from him. He said coming into the election that he wasn't sure if he was going to concede. So I'm really grateful that that Delegate Cox decided to make the concession, and I'm excited to move forward now.
Do you think that that helps reach out to some of the voters who supported him in this general election as you move forward and start to build a coalition and look at how you will govern and lead the state?
I think it does, and I think that, and we were always going to reach out to the people who did not support me anyway, because even for people who did not support me in this race, my response to them is, I'm excited to be your governor too. When I say we have a leave no one behind agenda, I mean that, and that doesn't mean leave no one behind unless you voted for me. It means leave no one behind, and it means finding solutions that are going to benefit Marylanders, everyone from the Eastern Shore to the Western Mountains, from Harbor and Cecil County to Southern Maryland to Baltimore and the Baltimore region, and everywhere in between. We have to be able to build an economy that grows. We have to be able to have an economy that is participatory, that people have a chance to participate in that economy. And that does include people who I might not have been their choice for governor, but I hope to be able to earn their support over these next 8 years.
8 years. Looking already to a second term?
I'm excited because I know this is Maryland's decade. This is going to be our time. It's going to be our time to build. It's going to be our time to grow. It's going to be our time to compete. Maryland will compete and Maryland will win. And I don't think there's a difference between saying we're going to be more competitive and be more equitable as if we have to choose. It's not a choice. We are going to do both. And I think the Moore Miller administration is excited to lead on that.
In your speech last night, you talked about the Moore Miller administration and you outlined some of the ideas that you want to move forward. And, the first thing that you talked about when you were looking at the administration was crime and public safety.
Yes.
And obviously in Baltimore, that is something that weighs heavily on the minds of voters. How do you plan to move that forward? And what do you think are some of the first priorities in that realm of public safety that you think you can get done?
Yeah, I mean, and as a Baltimorean, it's something that weighs heavily on me. You cannot, if you don't get public safety right, nothing else is going to work. Because if people don't feel safe, they're not going to stay and they're not going to come. So it is the number one priority that we've got to drill in and we've got to focus on. And so that means that we are going to work in partnership with local jurisdictions, with local leaders, working in partnership with our new state's attorney, because we've got to make sure we are getting and keeping violent offenders off of our streets. And that means fixing things like a broken parole and probation system that continues to allow violent offenders to come back into communities. It means we've got to get these illegal guns off of our streets that continue to flood into Maryland, and working with our federal partners, the U.S. Attorney and our federal partners, to be able to ensure that we can stop this pipeline of illegal guns that keep on getting into Baltimore's communities. And it means we have to do things like, providing state resources and putting them on loan to local jurisdictions. If you look at the closure rate, when a homicide happens in the city of Baltimore, there's a 41% closure rate. That means if I commit a homicide in Baltimore, I've got a better chance of getting away with it than actually getting captured, tried, caught, and convicted for it. And so you can actually take state resources, put them on loan to local jurisdictions like Baltimore to decrease the workload and increase the closure rate. But we've got to prioritize keeping our community safe. And I need for the city of Baltimore to understand that in the state of Maryland, you're going to have a partner in order to make that happen.
Couple of things with that. Because you're from Baltimore, do you think that that will help bring the focus on the needs of Baltimore? We have Brooke Learman, who's also at the state level coming from Baltimore. Do you think that that will really help usher in resources that otherwise have been left on the table for the city?
Absolutely. And I tell you, I mean, I have campaigned very aggressively over the past year and a half all around the state, and I'm saying the same thing everywhere. You cannot have a thriving Maryland if you do not have a thriving Baltimore, period. And I tell people, I don't say that because I'm a Baltimorean. I say it because I'm very good at math, right? This is a math equation. This is the state's largest city. And if you look across the country, the reason that you have states that are growing and competing, look at what's happening in their largest city. If you look at what's happening with Detroit and Michigan, or Atlanta and Georgia, and Pittsburgh and Pennsylvania, the reason that you're watching these states moving up economically is because their largest cities are showing a measure of economic vibrancy. And so we need for Baltimore to continue to lead the pace. It is the state's largest city, and the state cannot forget that when talking about what are the larger prospects for the state of Maryland.
When you're talking about state resources coming in, one of the priorities for the current administration in Annapolis was the violent firearms offender bill. It didn't get through the General Assembly, targeting those repeat violent offenders. Is that something that you would look at again coming up for this next session?
It is something we are going to look at because we've got to prioritize not just getting these firearms and illegal guns off of our streets. It's also about going after the people who continue to bring them into communities, the people who continue to serve as violent offenders, repeated violent offenders inside of our communities. And so I'm eager to work with the legislature. I'm eager to work with local elected officials in the city of Baltimore for people to know that I take this very, very seriously. And we've got to move aggressively to be able to make sure that people can and should feel safe in the place they call home.
I want to ask you about squeegee kids in the city. We're expecting some news from the mayor in terms of that later this week. Have you had any time to look at how the city is handling that, the current laws not being enforced about that? Do you think that that's the right approach?
Yeah, I have not had a chance to look at the plan, so I can't comment on that exact plan. But the thing that I know is that the state can and should play a partnership role with the city as to how exactly we're going to deal with this challenge. This has been a challenge that the city has been wrestling with for a very long time, and so I'm looking forward to working with City Hall, looking forward to working with the new state's attorney to be able to address and figure out how can the state be supportive to address something that cannot and should not continue to be a lingering challenge for the city of Baltimore to be able to address.
Will you and your family, are you guys planning on moving to the governor's mansion, leaving the city and moving to Annapolis?
Well, we're still having intense family conversations because we love Baltimore. This is a place that I proudly call home. I proudly call Baltimore home for much of my life. And I know that even if the family ends up heading to Annapolis, Annapolis is going to understand that they're inheriting a Baltimorean. And so this is gonna be a place I'll be spending a lot of time,
Yeah.
and frankly, a place that still very much has my family's heart.
What about your transition team? I understand the governor called you yesterday. The president of the United States called you yesterday as well. Can you explain a little bit about that conversation that you had with President Biden? And then do you have your transition team set and ready to go?
Yeah, so I was thankful that the president called last night to congratulate me, and he said what he said actually the night before when he was here in Maryland. What he said, I'm excited about Maryland. I'm excited about what you guys are doing. And I think it's really humbling to know that the president of the United States also understands that this is going to be Maryland's decade. This is going to be our time to build and to grow. And I'm excited that we're going to have a partner in Washington, D.C. and a partner in the Biden administration to be able to go and make the things happen that need to happen within the state of Maryland. And that starts now. And so you all will see that in short order, we are going to be announcing what the transition and transformation team is going to look like for the Moore Miller administration. And the thing that I'm really excited about is this is going to be a transition and transformation team that is going to be historically inclusive and also incredibly aggressive about the way we're talking about and building people together to say, what are the big things that Maryland can get done and how do we go about the process of doing it?
Perfect. I think that's all that I have. And I have a feeling we'll be chatting soon.
I look forward to it. I really
right.
do, Mikenzie. Thank you
Thanks
so
so
much.
much. Thank you.
It's good to see you.
You too. Bye-bye.